Good morning, everybody. This is Jack Gleason with Startuptrading.com. It is June 3rd, 2020, 9 o'clock in the morning, New York time. For our economic news events in the overnight session, we had GDP numbers out of the Australian dollar. The Australian dollar has had a huge move this week. And then last evening, we had final services PMI out of the Great Britain pound. All day, we're going to have G7 meetings this morning. ADP, non-farm employment change. Better than expected. And then at 10 a.m., our first Red Star news event is going to be for the Canadian dollar. It's the Bank of Canada rate statement, overnight rate. And then we're also going to have the ISM non-manufacturing PMI at 10 a.m. This evening, trade balance and retail sales out of the Australian dollar at 9:30. Crude oil inventories are going to be at 10:30. Obviously, that'll affect the price of oil. And then tomorrow morning, the main refinancing rate and monetary policy statement for the euro, followed up by an ECB press conference at 8:30 are our heavy hitters until Friday. And then we're going to have the non-farm employment change. So that'll be the biggest news event, most likely for the indexes for the week. Let's take a look here. I will start off with the S&P 500. Now, what we have is a very aggressive extension. Now, yesterday we held a full 50% retracement from the swing low of 30.20 to high. That was a 30.48 that lined up with a leg start here, this white dot. It's a 3-bar move. Traded it. We broke above the opposing long setup or short setup, and then we held a halfway back long. So really technical moves in the S&P. Right now, what we have is an extension sequence. So as soon as we started pushing through the profit target from the 30.48, we began an extension from the high of 30.75 half to high. This has traded its 50% retracement at 30.85. Its upside target is 30.99. You have a leg start at 31.01, 31.01. If we break this extension, I would look at 50% retracement from yesterday's low to high. That is absolutely on the table. If we break that extension, I would look at that Thursday low to high. That Tuesday low to high, and that would be the next pullback level. Now, if we don't complete this in the morning, if we don't, make a new high it's about a point higher from our current high, a little less, then there is no new extension. So just be a pullback in that higher time frame level. But it's just a slow, choppy grind higher here in the ES. And then with that, I do want to show you guys the VIX, the VXM20 June contract. We have the swing low from Tuesday to low. So the VIX is in an extension, and so is the ES. The VIX is in an extension short, and the ES is in an extension long. So as long as we hold the extension short in the VIX and the extension long in the ES, we're going to continue to be in that pattern. Moving on to the Dow. The Dow has our profit target. Sorry to pause there for a moment. The Dow has a higher time frame profit target all the way up at 26,151. On the hourly chart, we are previous leg start green and leg start green. So we're green here on the hourly chart. And I want to point out, what was the last move to hold? Well, we had Tuesday's low to high, hold a 50% retracement. It was pretty aggressively front run. We're totally through those targets. And what I am drawing and what I'm looking at is the 25,661 extension of high. We have traded it once to target. I'm looking at that same anchor new high. The 50% retracement is 28,000 or 25,820. 25,820. Sometimes it's hard to see those little numbers on my screen. So that is where I would be looking at for support here. just the high of the overnight session at 5 a.m., 25,661 to high. Moving on to the NASDAQ. Now, if you look at the pattern coming out of the NASDAQ on the prior day right now, we had the full 50% retracement from Friday's low to high. We had a long setup at 95.21 yesterday. Coming out of that 95.21, there was a 50% retracement long that blew through targets, and then we began an extension that traded into the close. That same anchor new high is what we have going into this morning. That same anchor new high is what we have going into this morning. Right now we have had a higher consolidation. I just want to see, yeah, I prefer the 50 here actually. This 50% at this point in time would be a 96.27, but 96.43.75 could have reaction. I'm going to look at the full 50% retracement of that extension just because this short here from just this most recent swing high to low pushes us through those 38% retracement support levels. So down to 96.27 is what I'm looking for. Moving on to CL. We have that oil inventory report today. Now, going into the end of the day yesterday, we completed a profit target at 36.53. We then actually had an extension from 34.66 to high. That traded and completed targets. Now, at the end of the day, when it completed targets, I had drawn that new high. What I find interesting is there was resting orders at that 50 that never got moved with the new highs. Resting orders at that 50 that never got moved at the new high. But if you do draw to the new high, we technically have a break of that extension sequence. I'm going to leave this draw up here. Depending on if we come back and hold this 36, that's going to determine really the future direction of the trend. But I also, let's see here. We are in the middle of this giant gap. This giant gap here that was on the Saudi Arabia Russia thing. So we have a whole lot of room till we get to the top of that gap, or I should say the bottom of that gap down the top. So right now, I do, just because this is such a strong trend, I want to remain bullish above 36. If we break 36 again, I would anticipate us to continue lower. But we do have that oil inventory report. Keep that in mind. Moving on to the USDJPY, we have the extension in the USDJPY. It's the same anchor new high in the daily. Yesterday, it was a rocket ship off the morning. We just blasted out. We began extensions from the 108.08s. We traded those to targets. Then we had a same anchor new high. Now, once again, they are ignoring, and this will happen when you get like spikes in the Asian session because it's such light volume, but there you can see that there's orders where the extension would have been placed had it not been moved to that Asian session high. It's similar to what we have in oil. There's also orders at the full extension, but we are bullish above 108.37 with an upside target of 109.02. And this is just, let's back out on the daily chart here. That's a 4-hour. Come here, daily. Pretty significant breakout yesterday. We've been below the 108.10 level since, what is that, April? And now we're in June, so 2 months. We were basically below that level, and now we're getting back above. I have these levels marked as resistance. If we can clear the 108.80s, which is right now the current high, we have room to run to the 109.37, which is the previous swing high from the 6th of April. Very strong trend here in the USDJPY. Aussie dollar. this market has had one heck of a reversal. Look at this. Started off the year, we're almost right back up to highs of the year, but we started off the year super aggressively bearish. We completely reversed. And now we are aggressively moving higher, and we continue to aggressively move higher. Our current setup is a daily extension from the high of May 27th. This is a very aggressive, very solid sequence. The 38% retracement is already traded at 68.66. The 50% is 68.31. Our upside targets are 70.54, which would be roughly a 220 pip target from the 50% retracement and like 190 pip target from the 38. So these are huge, huge setups. Moving on to the euro. Need to back out here. The daily time frame extension is from the 110.07s. Its 38% retracement is pretty far below. It's all the way down at 111.43. But let's remember, we have that ECB press conference tomorrow. So I think it's more than likely we're not going to trade this extension until the ECB press conference tomorrow. There's still going to be some action, obviously, up until that event. But with the Euro news event coming on to tomorrow, this is a really important. It's a 111.43, 38% retracement, which does line up with some previous highs. And then the 50% is 111.17. Then we have the pound, which is straight up here, straight up. So initially, we had this 50% retracement in the pound. We've totally blown through those targets. The daily move is for the 123.62 to high, but it doesn't even seem like we can come into that. Starting this week, we had a Sunday night bid that traded a halfway back into an extension that completed targets, and we're just kind of consolidating, honestly, above those highs. I will still look at this daily level. There's just, we have a 4-hour leg start here technically, so I'm actually going to mark that up. It's going to be hard to get through that. If we can clear the 125.93 with some strength, maybe we'll continue higher. But at this point in time, I do want to see a deeper pullback into that 38% retracement, that 125.16, and into the 50% retracement at 124.86. That market would need to head lower. Now, we had, what was the news event last night in the pound? Final services PMI at 430. Yeah, it really wasn't much of a reaction there. So we're just kind of working our way lower right now. Moving on to the USDCAD. This was the extension I'd drawn up yesterday and shared with you guys in the evening. But we had that CAD news. We have CAD news at 10 a.m. We have CAD news at 10 a.m. The USDCAD has just been very aggressively selling off here. If we do move higher, it would be into, there's this untraded daily extension short, and it goes back to the low of April 13th to low. If we do move higher, and it would be an incredible opportunity to get short. If we could trade into that 50% retracement, that would be at the 136.67. Now, the more aggressive extension from the 38.2 already reacted. It was a 135.71. That was the setup last night. Well, we reacted and we've already traded off 50 pips. So there really isn't much to do now that we've traded off 50 pips. You don't want to take a second test going into a Red Star News event. It's the Bank of Canada rate statement. It's basically their FOMC. So, the 50% would be a first test. That's at 135.98. And then really, if we either that or we're just going to complete these targets and then we have a same anchor new low. So if you're not in anything in the CAD, you almost have to wait for the higher time frame setups or for us to complete. And then gold and silver, gold specifically really getting hit hard here. I want to show you guys this daily setup. We very well could be coming down to the 1682. We've been going sideways for months. Since April. April, we traded this 50% retracement on the 21st. We retested it on May 1st. We retested again on the 6th, the 7th, and we're really breaking down out of what is just the highs of this range. And there's no known daily support until 1682, so we're either going to have to break short sequences or trade supports, because at this point in time, there was no bid on this 50% retracement long last night. Well, there was a little bit, but there was really just some sellers stepping in. And what I'm paying attention to for the short sequence, you have to go to a 5-minute chart, but the first halfway back out of the highs, I'm using this anchor of a 1748.7 a low. We traded it once, we traded it twice. Okay, and we've just completed that profit target. I'm going to leave this up. If we do get below that negative 61, there is the possibility for extensions to extensions here. I'd only draw them if we get below the negative 61. Otherwise, that same anchor new low, if that were to trade today, that would be the 1721 level. But right now we are through the lows. There is no known support until we get down to 1682. We have just completed an extension. So it's just a matter of, do we continue to go through these targets and then have a new extension, or do we rally into the same anchor new low? That is to be determined. Silver, I want to show you guys, we completed, and it might be interesting to watch silver with gold. I think they probably come to their support levels at the same time, but there was this extension in silver from the high of 1630 going back to April 14th too high. Now, we completed that on Monday. It was a gap up. We actually opened at the target, spent all day above it, and then yesterday lost it. That same anchor new high, the 38% retracement is this 1794, and the 50% retracement is this 1762. These are daily levels. They're very important daily levels. Now, we've technically just we traded 1794 to the tick. But the 50% retracement is still below us. The only way to confirm at least this 38.2 is to break above. I'd like to see us really start breaking back above today's high, because there is a lot of momentum down here. So this 50% retracement at 1762 is definitely something to pay attention to. Also, just a reminder, the last time this extension traded, it wasn't like we traded one test and never looked back. We traded one test, there was a bid. Then we came down for a second test, there was a bid. And then we came down for a third test, and that was last Wednesday when we traded that at 1722. Then we started our final bid to our targets, completed them, and now we're coming back in. So there was 3 tests before. This is the first test of the 38. The last time we traded the 50, I'm not super eager to be like, oh, this is going to be the low. I would think we'd probably test this multiple times. We still need to break above some significant resistance, but as long as we stay above 1731 on the higher time frame, the upside target is 1757. All right, 1757. So going into the day, the indexes are extremely strong. Oil has a Red Star news event with the oil inventory report. We did get a bid off that extension at 36.42. The currency markets are in incredible ranges. There's a lot of action here today. Gold and silver, for me, are kind of out of play unless they come into those daily levels. But there's definitely enough going on here. We got ECB press conference tomorrow. We got USDCAD. The monetary overnight rate, the Bank of Canada rate. So plenty of news, plenty of setups. Be patient. Everybody trade safe. If you enjoyed this content, please give this video a thumbs up. If you think anybody you know will find it interesting, feel free to share with them. And if you want to join the trade room and see my screen, catch my trade alerts, get my levels every morning, and much, much more, join with the link below. Take care, and I'll see you guys in the trade room. buy levels every morning, and much, much more. Join with the link below. Take care, and I'll see you guys in the trader.